Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome wherever you are listening in or watching. Jennifer Shinkai, Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai, and today's special guest. Very, very happy to have the multiple award-winning social legend that is Robin Lewis, who's looking like very embarrassed from this introduction. So Robin has over 10 years of experience working in social impact and sustainable development. He's like, how many times have I heard this introduction? And you can read all of this. But what I love about what Robin is doing at my Mizu, which he's drinking, he's just told me this, is, can you show me your limited edition sustainable cup? I have my rather battered, oh, you can't see, Spartan Race cup with a sticker on. I think that's very sustainable. Look at that. Spartan Races, miss them. What they're doing at my Mizu is less plastic, more fun, which is just a great approach to sustainability. A lot of the rhetoric is like very negative and it's all going to be boring. And when I heard about your story, Robin, as we talked about before, what I was really impressed was how you changed this moment of awareness, like there's something that the world needs, there's a big problem going on, and then you moved it to action. So I know that you have told this story many, many times, and it's probably very well rehearsed for you, but I would love you to share with the listeners of Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai just a little bit about this story that brought you to where you are now and how that connects with your Ikigai.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. It's really, I'm a massive fan of your work, and it's great just to be chatting with you about Ikigai, which I know you're so passionate about, and about all kinds of other things. My story begins in Japan. Actually, I was born here in Japan in late 80s, and my mother is Japanese and my father is from the UK, and I kind of grew up between the two countries, and nothing really remarkable happened in my life until actually university. And this is kind of one of the big changes that I had in my trajectory. But I was studying business, and I always say that studying business made me really hate business, because everything that we learned about was about profit maximization. It was about how to make as much money as possible and externalize all of the costs, right? That was the thing that we kept hearing, and I just remember thinking, surely there must be more to business, to life, to somehow integrate this with bettering society. So I always had this dilemma in my mind. And then, just as I was having this big kind of identity crisis, the 2011 tsunami happened in Japan. And that was a very big turning point, because my mother's family is originally from that area. So I came back, and that was the beginning of an entirely new journey in humanitarian work and social impact and so on. Just to fast in terms of how my Mizu started, I was actually kind of with this background in humanitarian affairs and these kinds of things. I was on a holiday in Okinawa, which is a very cliche thing. I just quit my job actually, and I was just trying to kind of do a bit of soul searching. And one morning I was walking along the beach in Okinawa, and I came across this huge pile of rubbish that drifted in from the ocean. And I'm sure many of you and your listeners have already seen these kinds of scenes, but you can imagine the fishing gear, the flip-flops, the deodorant cans, all kinds of stuff. But there was one thing that really stood out more than another. Yeah, all the good stuff, right? But there was one thing that stood out most, and it was PET bottles. It was just a whole ton of these things just strewn across the beach, and it just struck me that this is so ironic that we live in a country that is surrounded by drinkable water, which is very safe and healthy, and yet we create so many of these plastic bottles that end up in our natural environment. So I thought, well, surely we can do better than this, and that was the beginning of the My Mizu journey.
Right. How did that kind of work out practically? Because so I understand that at the time, you'd quit your job, and so you had space, right?
Yeah, had space.
You had space to play for options. Yeah. But many people have that, like, oh, this is a problem, somebody should sort this out, or, and they get kind of keyboard warriors, and we post things and we click stuff and we have a good rant on social media, but not many people then actually move it to action. So do you remember, or can you think back, and what were those moments that made you go, okay, move from somebody should do something to I am now doing this?
That's a really good question. And honestly, I mean, the reason I gave a bit of information on my background is that I guess I've been doing quite unique and weird things my entire career. So by that time, I'd already started my own non-profit organization. I'd already started various projects. And so the idea of starting something wasn't that new. But that being said, doesn't make it easy, right? I mean, there's all kinds of risks, whether it's financial, personal, reputation, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely a lot of fear when I took the decision to take this plunge and go all in.
Right.
And that meant cutting all other, job-related things, all other commitments, and just going 100% into this thing that became my museum. I should say off the bat that it wasn't just me; it was also my co-founder Mariko as well.
Yeah.
But it was pretty tough. But ultimately, we knew that there must be a better solution, and that
Right.
if no one else has a solution, then surely
Yeah.
someone's going to do it. Let's give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't remember really like having that many kind of aha moments or anything. It just kind of happened, and it was driven by this need for action.
Right. And it sounds like, I'm trying to remember who the person it was that said this to me. It was an entrepreneur, and it was the event I was doing at the ACCJ. And so I will go and find through my notes and put it in the show notes who this guy was. And I remember that he said, fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And it sounds a little bit about what happened for you with this. Does that resonate?
Yeah, it does, because the thing about plastic waste is that it's actually the tip of an iceberg. We're currently facing a number of existential problems as a species, right? Whether it's climate change, whether the current pandemic, we are in just a world of troubles right now. But the thing I like about plastic is that it's so tangible. Like when we talk about CO2 emissions, rise sea level, it's all so kind of big and almost too large to really grip. Whereas when you talk about plastic, it's like, okay, I get it, right? Everyone knows what a plastic bottle is, and it becomes the kind of the gateway to other actions. So our goal is not just to reduce PET bottles; it's to use the PET bottle as a conversation starter and really shift consumer behavior in a wider way. So for me, it's I guess it's the way that you can visualize and see the plastic that makes it such a compelling problem to try and tackle.
So it's like the gateway drug to social impact.
Honestly, that's what I say. I think it's like the perfect gateway drug to sustainable living is starting with a plastic bottle, because it's the easiest thing that anyone can do.
Yeah. And so you mentioned your lovely co-founder, Mariko McTeer. And how did that sort of come about, that you decided, like, let's do this together? Like how special it is to find someone that, you share this Ikigai, you share this vision. So what were those conversations like about, like, let's do it? I love your smile, so I'm really interested to hear.
So I think she would have a very account than I do.
Maybe I'll interview her another time.
You have to interview her. Yeah, what I'd say is that we have very similar interests, similar backgrounds. We're both half British, half Japanese. We really care about sustainability and these things, but we have very different skill sets. I guess objectively, I'm quite good at starting things and making lots of noise and making lots of mess. And Mariko is really good at like organizing things and leading people and this kind of thing. So we have very complementary skill sets. But in terms of how it began, I think it was just really a natural process. We thought, okay, well, there's a clear problem. we have already identified a clear solution. Now let's get to planning. What's the A, B, C, D? How do we get from 0 to 100 within 6 months, whatever it was? So we were very quick to implement. There wasn't that much time in planning, which was one of the things that I think helped us grow very quickly. It's just the fact that we were very action oriented, and we didn't spend too long, on the nitty gritty details.
Oh, that's awesome. Because one of the things that Ken Moggy talks about regarding Ikigai is the idea of starting small.
Yeah.
And so not going with this whole idea of a totally changed life or a perfect product or whatever this perfect purpose would be, and just starting something and see what happens. And it sounds like
I completely agree.
Yeah, that's how it worked for you.
Because I know a lot of people get really kind of, let's say, focused on the details, and that's obviously in many situations. But I think if you're trying to start something new, then it pays off just to do something and then just see what happens. I mean, if it doesn't work, just pivot, just shift. But I think the first step is so critical.
Yeah, and that's a little bit like your location where you are today, right? You moved to Nagano.
Yes.
For a bit.
Yes, I have.
And then pivot.
Yeah. Currently in Hakuba, and I guess this very much links to the topic of Ikigai. But when you are so passionately in something, it can often overtake your life, right? For better or for worse. And for me, having worked with social and environmental issues for over 10 years now, which is longer than I remember, it's really easy to just get completely sucked into this thing and give it 100%, and then you forget about your personal health, you forget about your friends, your work-life balance, and so on. So part of this move to Hakuba was essentially to reconfigure a balance, and that means going out, snowboarding for two hours a day, and then coming back and working however many hours a day, and trying to really balance things out for both mental and physical health. So
that's really interesting. And you just love snow.
Yeah, it's a great year this year. There's so much snow.
Yeah, and not many tourists, no inbound tourism, so the powder stays powder.
Exactly. So
yeah,
got luck.
And great that you can be supporting the local economy as well, right? So I think people are really struggling in that. But I appreciate what you said then about, sometimes when you have this very strong purpose, this very strong reason, reason for living, reason for being, Ikigai can be, about like raising your family. It can be about, a hobby or a different kind of activity that you're doing. But it sounds like, the type of projects that you're working on, and you can sometimes feel the weight of that. So I really respect that you have gone, okay, hang on. Like my life is not just about this actually. And I need to readdress that balance.
But I should also be very transparent and honest. I mean, it's been a struggle. I've had times where I've had physical health problems because everything I do is 100% related to the mission, whatever it is, right? And so I see this a lot with social entrepreneurs and people who are in the social and environmental space. They care so passionately about what they do that it can often have a very negative effect ultimately, right? So, I had a few, let's say, negative experiences, and I'm trying to learn from that and look after myself. And as the old saying goes, unless you care for yourself, you can't care for others, right? So that's what I'm trying to live by, those words, by being here in the snow and working very hard, but also playing hard as well.
Yeah, I'm big on your exercise bike as you are now. People are going, his hands are sitting in a really weird way. That's why. Behind the scenes of Robin Lewis.
This could be an entire podcast series.
Well, who's that guy who does like coffee, like there's something in Coffee in Cars? Is it Seinfeld does those interview series and they comedians drinking coffee in cars? Have I just made that up? No, that sounds real. So this
there's someone called James Corden who does that.
He does carpool karaoke. Okay, carpool karaoke. Let's not do that now. Actually, tomorrow this is only for Japan, January 9th on, this will be gone by the time that this is released, but Joy Sound is releasing a free karaoke day on the Nintendo Switch. So that's our plan for stay home, states of emergency, is to do uchi de karaoke.
Okay.
So I don't want
Please
to warm up.
live stream.
I will not be live streaming. Could be a way to get rid of any subscribers I have to my channel, essentially. Yes, I will not. I will not do that. But, you know, it comes a year you haven't been to karaoke and you're like, I just need to sing into a microphone. So we're planning to, you know,
you have to sing.
Get chips, karaage, some, you know, fried chicken, some edamame beans, some beers, turn the lights down. It'll be a very spacious karaoke box in our living room compared to normal one. It won't have sort of sticky floors. So you could maybe create that, but, you know, to get that feeling again of the things that you love and make cool. Those like, make the most of what we have. I've totally got distracted from what I was talking about in my notes then. Karaoke, looking after yourself, health issues. I think that's very valuable to give as sort of, you know, a word of warning to people who are thinking about, you know, moving into, especially like social innovation, social justice, like how you take care of yourself is also really important. And another thing regarding...
Can I just say, there's one phrase that I really love is, self-care is a discipline, not an indulgence. Ooh. Self-care is a discipline, not an indulgence. And I really like that, because it's not like you're taking time off. You're taking time off so that you can do 10 times more, and so that you can be 10 times healthier and 10 times happier and 10 times better to the people around you. So it's actually a discipline, right? And this for me was a major a game changer. I saw it, and I'm going to just take some time off, but actually that time is critical to everything else that you do.
Yeah. And anything around sort of creativity, getting new solutions is always talking about the idea of separating yourself from the problem, separating yourself from it, and taking a different perspective. And I've forgotten what the word is. I wrote a blog post about it because I was saying, I was doing one of those, you know, like escape room kind of things. And we were totally stuck.
Yeah.
It was the one they do around the Tokyo Metro. So it's sort of a puzzle thing. And we were so in it, and we were like, there, we're looking. And we must have been 45 minutes. We couldn't get this clue. And then I went to the toilet, and then I came back and I was like, I know what we're going to do. And I was right. Like, kind of get the distance. But yeah. That's cool. But it does take discipline, and there's quite a lot of culture of busyness, right? I think in Tokyo, like, being busy is a badge of honor. And I think that's been a change. I've seen a lot of people this year go, oh, hang on, like having the break, having the rest, just being here now is really important. But you reminded me of another idea around Ikigai, that there's a lot of a perspective that it needs to be something really positive. And I was very interested when I talked to Dr. Akihiro Hasegawa, who's an Ikigai researcher in Tokyo. And he said, you know, your Ikigai can be revenge. It can be, you know, Count of Monte Cristo is an Ikigai novel. And I was talking about this with someone yesterday or earlier this week. And she was like, oh yeah, it's like in The Princess Bride. The guy, now I'm trying to remember all of the story of The Princess Bride, but if anyone knows it, there's revenge. He has to try and kill this guy. Princess Bride fans, please don't be horrified by what I'm saying, because they're very weak knowledge, but the people who know it will know it. And then it happens, and he's like, what do I do with my life now? So my question to you on this is not, have you seen The Princess Bride? My question to you is, how do you feel your Ikigai shifting through your life? Like this area of kind of where you focus. Now, I'm not, who knows when or where the plastic waste problem will be solved, but let's say it was, what would be next?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. I think I should really, again, be honest and say that until the age of about 20 or 21 or so, I don't think I really had a very strong sense of Ikigai. And I think only when I reached that age, 21, 22, I started to see what I was really passionate about and what I really cared about. And so I've transitioned a lot from originally I was in disasters, so I was really passionate about disasters and humanitarian issues, and then I switched over to climate change and then plastic, and it has shifted. But I think it's all of these different, seemingly unconnected things are very connected by this common thread that is, for me, social and environmental impact. So, I mean, that could be anything. In 5 years' time, maybe I'll be doing something completely different.
Right.
But ultimately, all these challenges are interconnected. So again, I don't have a clear answer on that, but I think what I would love to do and what I enjoy doing the most is essentially creating positive energy and working with people who really care about what they're doing in a fun way. It's so easy, especially when you're working in a very let's say challenging space. Like climate change is probably the biggest existential crisis that we face. To keep your chin up, have a good time, but do good things at the same time. So
Right.
I think whatever happens, I'll hopefully continue in that spirit, and then just see where it takes me.
Yeah, I think that's what makes that my experience, sort of, as a user of my Mizu and seeing everything that you're putting out there, it doesn't. It's impactful, but without the guilt or the shame or oh my God, what are we going to do? Kind of thing. And I think that approach, that's why it's resonated so well with people, because it makes it more approachable, easier to deal with. And do you think that comes from sort of your energy and Mariko's sort of discussion about how you wanted to position it? Was it something that you said, okay, we're going to go this way, just something which happened naturally?
I think it's all of the above. Honestly, I mean, one thing that we've tried to be wary of is there are some really interesting studies out there that show that specifically, and this is mainly related to non-violent protests, but if 3.5% of the population takes part actively in a cause, then every time there has been a massive societal shift, right? And so it's called the 3.5% rule. If you can engage 3.5% of the population and then mobilize them towards a common goal, then in almost all cases that the movement, whatever it is, will succeed. And so what we're trying to do with MyMizu is really reach that 3.5% threshold that will then become the tipping point to the societal change that we need to have when it comes to sustainability and sustainable living. When you do the maths, as they say, the population of Japan is 128 million or something. And if you get 4%, 3.5% of that is something like between 4 and 5 million people, which is not that much. I mean, we could do that, if we just kept going, we're going to reach that critical threshold, and then things will just kick off on a whole new level. So in order to achieve that 3.5%, our belief is, or at least my belief and Michael's belief, is that you have to lead with a positive story. You have to tell the story and engage people and essentially, answer the question, why should I care, right? Why should I care about X, Y, Z? And then you can create this movement, we hope.
Right. That's wonderful. Yeah. I think you're doing an amazing job on it. And, I was looking on your website around your team, and I had a question about the wider team. And so this is kind of a structural question. So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is so you and Mariko are full-time employees of your organization. This is your day job. But for your wider team, some of them are sort of nimai meishi, like they have two jobs, or are they full-time, or how does it work? And the reason that I'm asking this around the Ikigai question is some people go, well, I can't necessarily follow what I really want to be doing right now. I don't see how I can pay my rent if I follow that right now, but I really feel this desire to to give back or to do something. So volunteering or being involved in a different way is my calling, is kind of the reason I can do it. And then I can be a whatever from 9 to 5. And that's a great balance for me. So I'm interested in your volunteers, and you don't need to name names and talk about their contracts, but how it generally is working.
That's a really great point. And what I'd say is structurally, so we have currently 4 full-time employees, 4 full-time staff, and then we have a number of part-time staff as well. But then on top of that, we have interns, we have volunteers, we have pro bono people, we have all kinds of people. And the team size is roughly 25 or so. So we have a great team, but as you say, many of them, those that are not part-time or full-time, are nimaimeshi, as you described it, and that means they're helping out in the evenings, on the weekends, and some of them work for major Japanese corporations, some of them work for government, all kinds of people are all united by this mission that we're on. So yeah, I would say that is such a valid way of giving back. If everyone quit their jobs and tried to do something radically game changing in terms of like saving the world or whatever you want to call it, then the society would fall apart, right? That's not how things work. We have to have people doing the jobs that they may find very, very fulfilling. But if they don't, then yeah, of course you can volunteer or whatever on the weekends and the evenings, and that is just as big a way as to giving back as any other, I think.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the sort of myths that I get about Ikigai is, I have to leave my corporate job and join an NGO or an MPO and do good works in order to feel a sense of purpose. And I always try to challenge that and say that there's actually many opportunities, specifically in the area of sustainability. Of course, as an individual consumer, I can make a difference through my consumption and the client, the companies that I work with and the companies' products that I buy. But really, the biggest impact is from large corporations, right? In terms of impact on climate. So if you're working for one of these large corporations, then your scale is totally different and the impact you can have is there. So I always challenge people around that, like, who do you work for? What do you do? You're smiling, so I'm preaching to the choir on this one.
No, but it's interesting. There's the term intrapreneur. Right? There's entrepreneur who does their own thing, starts their own business, whatever it is, and then there are intrapreneurs, right? And intrapreneurs are the people who create change within organizations. And as you say, if you're working at one of the biggest companies in the world and you make a tiny change, that scale, the net impact could be 100 times bigger than anything that a small organization could do. So I always say this: start with your own organization, see how you can change things in a positive way, and then if you're still hungry to do more, maybe volunteer on the weekends or be pro bono or whatever to give back more. But yeah, it's often the closest places where we can make the biggest impact.
Yes, I love that as the sort of the Ikigai intrapreneur. I feel there's another another book there.
I know a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I've met so many of those people who work for huge organizations who really are genuinely passionate about driving change. And it's been that's one of the things that I love most about my job, my day job, my life work, whatever you want to call it, is that I get to meet all these incredible people who genuinely care and want to.
Yeah. And you've, as an organization as well, done a lot with corporate partners too, right? So getting some...
Yes, we're very fortunate to have some great corporate partners who we're doing all kinds of things with, from building new products to doing campaigns to making cool videos. And it's been a really fun journey with our corporate.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love just your smile and energy and how you're kind of keeping on it. And also that you've said as well, though, sometimes enough is enough and I need to get out of Tokyo and I need to look after myself and take those breaks. And I think that if people have those very strong callings that are around impacting social change, that's really like a huge takeaway from me from our conversation so far. So if there was someone who's listening to this says, I just want to be like Robin, he's awesome. Well,
I
you're
would say
what?
don't. I say
Don't,
don't bring
because
it up.
be yourself, right? Everyone else is already taken. So, but what sort of advice would you give them if they wanted to? They feel this kind of, they see a problem in the world and they want to go fix it. And it's one of those, it just doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think often the biggest disruptions, the biggest changes that we see in society come from a sense of discomfort, right? So, and this kind of goes back to your original question about when you see something, do you do something, or do you kind of look at it and then walk away? And I think in many cases, I don't fault people for walking away. There's no problem with that at all. But if that nagging feeling is in the back of your mind and you're really feeling a sense of discomfort, then there's honestly, in many cases, a very big opportunity to make something happen. So I would say if you have a problem that you really care about and it's just nagging, take that first step. If it doesn't work out, then no problem. Just move on to the next thing, or pivot or whatever. And you never know where the world will take you.
So the only way to get the nagging voice out of the head is to take some action.
Yeah, even if it's a tiny thing. You mentioned kind of keyboard activism or online activism, whatever. We're all influencers in some way, right? We can be micro influencers, we can be major influencers. It doesn't matter, but we all have a sphere of influence. And so if we start telling people about X, Y, Z, you never know how big the impact will be and what the outcome will be from that. So there are so many things that we can do from right now, to make a better society.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. And what have been some of you talked about some of the difficulties that you'd had early on and sort of challenges along the way. How have you got over those challenges? Because many people face kind of similar things when it's not going so well. What have been mindset or habits or resources that you've used that help you to carry on?
Yeah, I should say again, just to be open, that I've had a lot of challenges and I don't by any means have it figured out, but a few things that have helped me have been basically things like meditation. I try and do 5 minutes a day, which is nothing, right? I mean, I have the attention span of a goldfish, but I can do 5 minutes of meditation a day. I try and again do exercise. I'm on my exercise bike as we speak.
It's not got your washing piled over it, which is amazing.
So I literally just took the washing off and brought it. So anyway,
I know.
So I think it's things, and it ultimately the problem that I face and I'm trying to fix is discipline, right? 5 minutes of meditation, doing even 10 minutes of exercise. Another thing that I try and do is journaling. So I write every morning 3 things that I'm grateful for the day before, and just these tiny habits have made a huge difference. But again, I have a long way to go, so I'm still very much figuring things out as well.
Right. But these are small things. It's really interesting, the different people talking to about this kind of topic. Like these same things are coming up, like meditation and journaling and move my body and maybe spending time with people I care about, like these little things, or what's you talked about your going out snowboarding, like these hobbies that rejuvenate us and just make life worth living, really. Yeah.
I'm currently reading a book called Time Off, and it's all about how time off inspires your creative side. Yeah, and I was recommended it. In fact, I was semi-forced to read it by by some of my team that you have to read this. And
and then they went, really, please move to Nagano and leave us.
Exactly. Yeah, that's basically what happened. But again, I find it as a very useful resource in helping to cultivate that mind that rest is extremely important for anything that we do.
Yes, I'm just Googling it now. Time Off. Oh no, book. I think I know this book. Yes, it's by Max Frenzel, and Maria Suzuki did the and John Fitch. There we go. Yes, yes. I think it's a very important, as we were talking about the cult of busyness before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so right at the beginning, you talked about your background of being half British and half Japanese. And one of the things around Ikigai, it's really trendy in the English speaking world right now. And I was wondering, as someone of half British, half Japanese descent, was this something you were raised with? Your parents talked to you about? What is your Ikigai, Robin? Or not?
No, not at all. Yeah,
Not
I
at
mean,
all.
it's funny. I think I first came across the term ikigai on LinkedIn or something really unexpected. And I remember thinking, what is this ikigai? I'd kind of heard of it a few times in
Yeah.
Japanese, but again, the meaning in Japanese and the meaning in English is kind of different. Right? I mean, it's kind of, you're much more knowledgeable than I am about this, but it was interesting. Yeah, just
Oh,
hearing
I'm
this.
really interested to hear like what your interpretation is of how you see the differences of English, Romaji, Ikigai, and Ikigai.
That's a honestly, this is kind of something I haven't really thought about. But ikigai in Japanese is not really used that often, right? I mean, it is in some cases, I think, but in English, it's much more likely with. It's almost a management philosophy, right? Or like, no, it's to do more with business.
Yeah.
It's something that that's my initial thinking. But what about you? What do you think?
No, agreed. I mentioned Dr. Hasegawa before, and he's talked about the 4-part diagram that was designed on the back of a napkin by I've forgotten his name, Jack Wynn. Oh, that's terrible. I can't remember his name. Mark Wynn. There we go, Mark. Sorry, Mark. Sorry. Who I did interview. And what I love is, he took this idea, he'd heard about Ikigai and a purpose Venn diagram, and he sort of superimposed the two on the back of a napkin and shared it, and it went massive. It went viral. It became the source for the book of Ikigai by Hector Garcia. And so that became what the English speaking world knows about Ikigai. Not only the English speaking world, actually, like outside of Japan, let's say, sees as Ikigai. And then when you show this Venn diagram, Japanese people go, what? And Hasegawa sounds like, when I first saw it, I thought it was really weird. And I love the work that they do on the Ikigai tribe about this. They're like, this is not Ikigai. But my view is, it isn't Ikigai, as generally Japanese people think about it. But as a coaching model, is it a useful coaching model? Definitely. So let's try to think about what the authentic original meaning is, which is more about just the consciousness and the will to live and your understanding of why you're here, right? If we look really just at the kanji, and then maybe some of these questions about what do you love, what are you good at, what can you be paid for, and what the world needs, those are some pretty good questions to ask yourself when you're thinking about why you're here in the world. And as we talked about earlier, society functions in a certain way, so we do also need to have an income. Generally, somebody has to have an income in the world at some level. So
That's really interesting. Now, I remember I've shared that graph a few times with students. I'm lucky to have opportunities to speak to a lot of students at schools and universities. And generally, the response is really good. They're like, "Oh wow!" If they haven't seen it, they're like, "Oh, that's a really interesting way of framing things." So,
yes,
as you say, maybe it is a really powerful tool. It may not be 100% accurate in terms of the original Japanese meaning, but just to think about various kind of components of your life, right? So that's an interesting concept.
yes. So I think it's useful to have those two ideas and just be able to hold that paradox that it's not necessarily what your average Taro Suzuki in Tokyo is going to be thinking about when you say Ikigai, but everybody can look at this model and go, oh yeah, that's an interesting framing of it. And is it useful for me where I am now, where I'm feeling a bit stuck and I don't know, what I want to be when I grow up, or what do I want to do with my life? When you're having those personal existential crises, of just there's something more, and I can't work out what it is. Or one of the things about, Ikigai and aging is talking about how your Ikigai changes with your role. So when you retire, right, we hear all these stories in Japan specifically of, like men who retire and then suddenly that's when their wife divorces them, or that's when they don't know what to do with themselves, because suddenly this reason for being, your role like as the breadwinner or your role as the homemaker in a very traditional household, that shifted. So sort of, that was my question before about like what happens when plastic waste is solved, like what's next? When you kill the six-fingered man, I think it was in The Princess Bride, like what happens when this revenge is completed? What happens when your role shifted? Because my take on Ikigai is that as we have new experiences, new information, new roles in the we can see in the future, then our purpose is going to change. Like if you hadn't walked along the beach on that day, this might not be where you are today.
I might be selling plastic bottles.
Yeah, you could be. You never know, a sliding doors moment, potentially, and the things which came from there. Yeah. So is there any final messages that you have for listeners of Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai about yourself, advice, my Mizu, others, Social Innovation Japan?
I would say, please check us out online. I believe our links will be shared somewhere in the. Yeah, you can also check out our stickers there that Jennifer's holding. We have events, beach clean, as Social Innovation Japan, which is the non-profit that I'm co-running. Then we do lots of events on things broadly related to social impact. We've done events on Ikigai all the way to gender equality and all kinds of things. So please do check out our website and our social media, and I would love to stay in touch with all of you.
Awesome, thank you. And are you doing a lot of events online now so people can join as long as the time difference works for them? Obviously the beach clean requires
the beach clean does require physical attendees, but we are doing a lot of events online. Starting this year, we're starting on Sunday, which is in a couple of days' time, but we'll be doing things at least once a month. So please.
Great. Yes. Not entirely sure when I will release this, but we will find out. Yes, I was talking about karaoke tomorrow. It won't be tomorrow. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Robin. It was really great to talk to you. And I wish you the best of luck with your new lifestyle in Nagano. And so may you have smooth slopes and happy jumps. Actually, that reminds me, I love that you shared recently a video of you totally nailing a jump. I believe that was you.
Yes, I did nail a snowboarding jump. I'm just waiting for sponsors to get in touch with me, but there must be probably my email or something. But yes, I am very untalented with snowboarding, but I'm trying to get better.
Exactly. And that's practice makes perfect. And I've really appreciated, your vulnerability and sharing, as well as the amazing jump too. So thank you for the inspiration today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Bye.